So I think yesterday or the day before, you were asking a couple of questions about the Solana Bridge in several channels.
Yes, correct.
Did those answers that you got satisfy you, or are we iterating on that? Because it's difficult for us, since the Wax team is managing the bridge and they are willing to open source it anytime soon. I don't think anyone of us in this call is qualified to give you a distinct answer for things about the bridge.
Could someone at least direct me to the correct person from the Wax team to talk about it? Because I'm sure I had some chats open with Wax team, but I haven't been directly in contact with them for a long time, so I'm not sure actually what were the names. If someone could,
include Null, or also named Craig, who was answering your questions, is an official He is an official representative of the Wax team. He's supposed to manage the developer relations with the Wax team. So.
Okay, that's helpful. I will just try to find this group on the Telegram and see who that was.
As far as I know, the Wax Solana Bridge is a bridge for whitelisted tokens, so you need to get whitelisted and use their interface. So you have to use their contracts to use the bridge, and you need to be added in that contract.
That could be completely okay, because theoretically for us is enough to literally have an ability to convert VaxP Solana. Everything else, from VaxP we can convert via Alcor to our Vax tokens, and from Solana we can convert to whatever we need from the Solana side. So just a simple bridge, and Solana and VaxP and certain are.
So you don't even want your own token, you want to have the Wax token bridge?
Yes, we are not looking for bridging our VaxP tokens into the Solana. We are not looking for Solana elements to bridge them to Vax. We are unifying it within the game. I'm not sure who is up to date on what development progress have been on our side, but we have recently focused a lot as well on backend side, which unifies the things, and this will help us to actually bring within the game elements from multiple chains by actually not doing 10 times work by, let's say in the future, having 10 blockchains and then having each asset being able to reproduce on another blockchain.
I think this is easier than you believe, because unless the Solana bridge is different than the Ethereum one, you don't need to use their interface, you don't need any API, you just need a smart contract. It's just how you format the memo with the transfer. That's how the Ethereum bridge works. So you send your tokens with the right format in the memo, and then it goes over to that chain. And then you might need a claim on that chain. I don't know. You might get the transfer directly. And on the other way back, I assume it's the similar way. At least that's how it is on Ethereum. So you don't actually need to use any API. You just tap into the contract, have a normal UI for that, and then you need one on the Solana side to view add claims and MetaMask support in your wallet or one of the Solana wallets, I guess.
For Phantom, we have integrated Phantom. It's still not live, but on the dev side, where we just integrated Phantom.
If the bridge is the same as for Ethereum, you can do this on your own. You don't need to have an API, and that will be probably more reliable for you. Just to tap into the smart contracts.
Would you be able to also write me down a little summary of that later post-call or something? DM me or something, if that's okay, to share with the rest of the team?
I don't know the token address, but it's probably bridge.wax or something, right? Kafer might know.
Seems like he's not able to talk at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know the smart contract. I probably figured out to probably have it noted somewhere. I might even know where I have it.
If you figure it out, I would really appreciate if you could DM me or something.
It is bridge.wax.
Bridge.wax.
Bridge.
You can look at the transfers and you will see it. So you can just test their interface. You do one of your own transfers over to that chain. You see how the memo is structured, and then you just do the reverse, and you have the information you need.
Okay.
So yeah, they use it's the same thing as for Ethereum. I see it here.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I have never sent tokens back from Solana to Wax. I don't know the process on that side, but I assume it's similar.
We'll dig into it.
Since you don't need your own token, this is way easier to do.
All right. Carlo, did that satisfy your question for now?
Yes, I will dig further into it with my team, and we'll see if it helps us enough.
Okay.
But definitely it's great to have any inputs, advices, and so on.
Good. If possible, please report back to us on the governance channel, and we'll see if we need to help you further.
Will do. Thank you.
You're welcome. What's next?
Do we have any updates on the Wax team conversations that we talked about the last 2 times?
Unsure. Maybe Kefar can report on that.
He seems to have bad connection, so I don't know.
Nothing we can discuss right now, he says in the chat.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else we want to discuss here? Any topic you want to raise? Any experiences you made with any software component on Wax? Any insights? Any issues you're tackling?
I'll give you an update, at least on, what was it? Fabian was adding rentals. Isn't that what he was trying to do? Rentals to the atomic asset. A couple weeks ago, he had given me a hacked up version to try on one of our backups, and it did not work and had, I don't know, some kind of an upgrade error. And I relayed it to him, and he was like, ooh, that's going to take a little bit to fix. And he has not had a chance to dive back and grind on it. So that's kind of on hold.
I see.
But just as an update, I think Kaz had asked before.
That's good to know. I didn't know that was the case. So I appreciate the insight.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't have because it was on my servers, but I had done it a couple of weeks ago and it blew up. And then I followed back up with them and I was like, hey, I still got a server that's just dead in the water. It's fine. I got other ones running, but I asked him and he's like, no, it's going to take something to fix it. Whatever the upgrade was, something about indexes or something about the table data. And then he said, but he did say he was tied up on something, so he wasn't actively on it right now. But whenever he does, we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the contract code's been done for ages now. So We just gotta go over this hump. I don't know what can be done. And it's like on my side of things, trying to get the audit for it has been an uphill battle, like both ways. It's ridiculous. Every quote that I've seen for the audit is like more than the entire grant, like the entire scope of the project. And so it's like, well, okay, what an audit. Like, so I talked with Greg about it. He said Craig about it, and he said that they're considering doing it in-house. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, crushed the code out in a few weeks, and then it was actually almost like 90% done after like a week and a half, and then it's just been just sort of strung along for like 5 months now. Like, come on now, we just gotta get over the finish line. But of course, the last 5% is the hardest.
Pareto principle, right?
Something like that. It's the Wax Labs principle.
All right. Next.
Michael, you got any resources on launching chains and just like work with the BIOS and all that?
I've launched all kinds of chains on my nodes by screwing it up and getting it in its own world. As for launching a chain from scratch, I did a few that kind of ran through the normal system contract deploys. I don't know, the old school EOSIO docs about deploy. Yeah, I mean, pack of them, whatever it is, EOSIO, and then token and
MSIG, RAP, BP. There's so many.
Right. There's this kind of a stack and a pack of them that kind of go together, and then an execution script, and then I remember having been involved with Telos, because Telos launched theirs and they did an import and stuff like that, and it was a monstrous script and constantly needed tweaking, like on different versions and stuff like that. Just it was monstrous to try to script that deployment of the chain to get from A all the way to B in the history of time, because like your docs are old and features are different. That MC contract's completely different than what it used to be. It works the same. Well, I guess it doesn't, but most of those launch scripts are private. For obvious reasons, the team that did them got paid to do them and get paid to do it more. So they don't really release that script out for everybody to launch their own chains. Like a public chain. Launching your own private chain for like a side chain, that's pretty cut and dry. You don't need a lot of the extra.
Yeah. It's already it's ready to go, but and it's already up. I'm just struggling with deploying the actual system contract. Same with BIOS as well, right? I think when compiling it. Yeah. So I think I'm just tired right now. We'll probably crack at it tomorrow, but I'm just trying to see if there's any resources, any docs, anything you got. Just trying to read up on all that, even if it's like old stuff, I feel like I'm just missing like some crucial step. I think right now what it is how I'm compiling the contract. It's not referencing and making the correct links to the intrinsic host functions, like set producers, get user resources, set finalizers, and all that.
What CDT are you using?
4.1.
You might try an older one. Just
older one, huh?
4.1. It feels like those were like 1.8,
2 point
they
something.
were like they matched the contract versions, which so 4.1. Now again, I don't do a lot of SC dev, but the CDT version I think should be lower than that.
Yeah, 1.7, 1.8 was like what I used for quite a while, but I've rewritten the entire systems contract like over the weekend. So it's like it's like the contract's fine. I just can't deploy it. It says it can't parse the WASM.
Those two lines don't go together. But the one you said right before it, I rewrote everything. It's fine, but it won't deploy. You say that again to yourself and say, I can't. No, but in all seriousness, there have always been weird quirks with those CDT versions, and knowing the way those sys contracts are, and one's probably from 2017 and MSIG's probably from 2021, 22, right? I mean, there's a big gap between them. If you're having trouble compiling them or deploying them,
I can compile all of them, and I can like deploy like the token. I can deploy like anything that doesn't have intrinsic host functions within it. So the things that are going like underneath the layer of like out of the EVM and in and calling like directly to Nodios.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious if you compiled them with maybe an older one, if it treated it different. I don't know. I'm just kind of grasping it there. They should work, right? I mean, if you compile it, you get the ABI, the CPP, and you smash it out there, right? But they're not working right, then maybe, when it's compiling it, it's not the newer way of doing it's different. I don't know. But again, I thought CDT was like at 1.8.
Well, that's quite old now. That was like several years ago. And the thing is, like the new CDT, it shouldn't make a huge difference, But a new CDT, it's got like it fixes a lot of bugs that were in the old ones that were like artificially bloating the RAM size.
I get it. I mean, and I remember they would complain the other way, is that 1.7 bloated the hell out of things and 1.6 didn't, and you would get different results. I mean, you definitely get different hashes and stuff like that out of the different CDT stacks. So it's different. So that's why I say you should try to use latest that you can. If you're having some quirks, I'd see if maybe one of the older CDTs might help, but
I sent him the EOS Costa Rica guides. I figure they are probably reliable to make sure he makes all the steps required.
Costa Rica's launched a few chains. I know those guys, so they're good guys. See how blessed one,
Yeah, I followed the guide. I did all the instructions within it, other than like setting up like 3 producers, because that's just not the issue. I pre-activated all of the protocol features. But yeah, there's just something with, I think, how I've set up the compiler. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to tackle it, but gladly take any resources. That's really what I'm asking. We're not like a complete solution, but just any documentation, resources they might have laying around.
I do remember the feature activation being kind of a quirk, but I think it was more that new features got added after the launch, so they kind of had to be accounted for.
Yeah, you need to activate them in the right order or whatever, if I recall. Isn't that what it is, Michael?
Yes, but as much as, and I just in reference to like the few docs that he would find, the old EOS.io docs and that process don't have half of the shit that exists now. You know what I mean? So that's why I say is I remember those features being a quirk, but just as much as they were new and had to be added to that script, but also the documents that he would find wouldn't account for it either. You know what I mean? Just Crypto Lions. I think there's a crew on here from Sea Lions, right? They've launched a lot of chains. So if I were to have a question, it would probably be Crypto Lions or Costa Rica would probably be my 2 to ping, just because they've done it, but they do it professionally. So they probably don't tend to have a bunch of Medium articles about it.
Okay, appreciate it. I'll reach out to them, see if they can help me. Yeah, I feel like it's literally just a compiler, just one setting. Maybe I'm like missing some of the binaries. But yeah, it's like literally like the last step. And man, I was tackling this like this weekend, thinking like, yeah, I'll just swap a couple of things around, add this, remove that. The original EOSIO system, it's the smart contract doesn't even begin until 1,000 lines in. It's an abomination. It's like literally like just band-aids over band-aids over band-aids, like year after year, all of the protocol features and like the guards, like the if defines and all of that. Like you can't tell where it begins, you can't tell where it ends. It's just like, it's insane. And yeah, so, and then it's like, well, I'm going through all of it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm familiar with most of the code base. This is fine. And then, well, what about the Savannah consensus? Because I don't have any experience working with that. So I have to learn all of that and figure out like, well, what even is a finalizer key? What even is this,
Oh, that's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah. Busy weekend.
So wait, is the course for the code for Spring 1.0 available online?
Well, the code's out there, and the licensing model is anything below X market cap is free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta love BSL licensing.
Yeah. But I wasn't aware that the code is actually available publicly.
Yeah, it's been all along.
Yeah, I mean, it's I compile it. They've just released an updated system contract, which I'm pretty sure were 1.8 or 1.9 maybe.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So when is round A or seed round happening, Cars?
Well, there is no seed round, no ICO, no nothing.
When you onboarding VPs, that's fine.
Well, you can sync up to the network right now. It's up and running.
Can I BP claim?
You can't BP claim. So that part of tokenomics, I'm programming that in right now. That's but I just gotta be able to deploy the systems contract, man. I know. It's throwing a wrench in all my plans here.
When you're ready, let me know.
You definitely also need a governance entity for the blockchain.
Right. That's exactly what you need.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, if that's the case, I'm out. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting thing to have like a governance like aspect of it, and eventually be able to like hand the chain off to everyone else. But it's like I gotta actively like, if the chain's for a product, like I have to do a live service for this product. It can never truly be decentralized, even if I put in all the effort into it, like. So it's like, well, what's the point, And for most users, well, they just want to play the game. They don't want to, right? Let's just run the infra nice. Let's keep it like bare minimum headaches, bare minimum obstacles. Keep it cheap, affordable. It's interesting because so with the billable RAM kind of thing, the whole space-time model. Technically, like it'll be way too expensive for the chain, like for users for the chain to ever have like a state greater than 8 gigabytes. But what can happen technically is if users set out and they pick up every single NFT that they find, and like 100,000 users did this, technically the chain could like sporadically grow to like maybe like 100 or 200 gigs, but then it all just gets wiped after like a 24-hour period. So I know.
If you kill those nodes, your second phase of plan does not occur. It is a brick wall, and it is 100-mile-an-hour stop. Bam, you hit that limit, and either the node just shits because it's out, or it thrashes so hard it becomes unusable. So I hear you, but if you were running on my i9s, you would never see that downside of that hill. As soon as you hit that 128 plus a little, you would just thrash the hell out of those NVMEs, crush it into oblivion, and freeze the chain. And then none of the other machines that were running could go forward either because you're frozen.
Yeah. I guess they would have to, because I mean, in like 99% of cases, it wouldn't be an issue. But it's like it could be a potential attack vector when you have
that kind of,
yeah. So it's
but
like
if you instantaneously shoot up a state like that, I mean, I know you say it'd go up and it'd go back down, but if it's like that for one block, the node's going to have to blow out state, validate that block, and then collapse it back down. And when it blows out the state, that's where it's just going to shut down and stop. So
that should impact replaying it also, right?
Definitely.
I mean, it's the same concept of that block, even if it's just one, has to inflate. And then that's great if you want to deflate after, but the inflation's what's going to just crush it. That's why 8 gigs, I'm like, hey, that's awesome. That's a nice, small, little compact. But you're going to have to run a 256 gig node in case state blows out to 200 gigs to make sure it doesn't die.
Don't worry. I'll make sure to put some, because it's like with no RAM restrictions, all of the smart contracts have to have like built-in like guards for this, and like,
and that's just from the Node OS level, it's just going to go willy-nilly. That's why I'm like, from the node, it's going to be like, all right, keep going. Oh, I ran out. Whoops.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the RAM side of things is actually, that's not too tough to figure out. Could just set like a global limit of like how many NFTs can be like, I don't know, like picked up every like 15 minutes even, right? But if you have like gas-free transactions, so 0 CPU, 0 net being built to user, it opens up the attack vector of someone just like executing transfer actions just back and forth.
Yeah.
You transfer enough NFTs, it will fill the block, even though it's like you could transfer 1,000 for maybe 10 milliseconds, so now it's like, I don't know, I'm just thinking about like zero resource cost models, and it's like, well, this is a huge barrier where like,
I mean, all resources have cost. Somebody's eating it. Either the entity, the game, or the user. I more think that the first should pay it, because the second is where we failed in user experience all these years.
Right.
I don't have CPU. You're right.
But this case is a bit special
because they don't know what they're doing, right?
Since his chain is more like a private chain for a game, then you can set a lot of limits that is harder to do on a public chain.
Well, I mean, what he's saying is he's just trying to reduce the footprint and the cost to the chain, right? I mean, and it's not state that he's filling up. He's talking about the blocks, and I assume the block log, but
and Hyperions, right? Because it's like it's just that becomes an attack vector, right? If there's no expense, you can easily just spin up 10,000 accounts and just have them transfer NFTs back and forth, right? Completely meaningless data, and so, but it's like,
welcome to the problem of free resources.
yeah.
And smart contracts, because you have direct access to the back end. I mean, a lot of apps solve it by you don't get access to the Postgres MySQL database. You get access to the front end, and the front end wraps you right across your forehead whenever you try to click the button 5,000 times, or it's controlled via access as much as it's controlled via security and code on like the back end. But with a smart contract, you can just bing. So it has to be intrinsic at the contract or chain. I think probably contract level.
Definitely contract level.
Tables,
I mean,
thinking that's where it's looking.
the only thing you could do at the chain level is just make it so that all actions just have like a flat rate cost, but then it's not gas free, right? That's the main issue.
Gas free with limited ability to protect is just an intrinsic. I mean, it's a flaw of DPOS or antelope code, in my opinion. Is there's resource cost, even if you think there aren't. That's great. You're obscuring it from the user. That just means somebody else has to pay it. So, okay, make it all free. And then you pay the burden and the cost. Or build a system to try to limit your cost on that. But if you let them do it for free, they're going to abuse it to the point of...
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think just even having the cost, but there's like an infinite difference between like 0.0001 and 0.
Right. But it never costs you 0. It always costs something for somebody to run it and store it and care.
Yeah. A little bit of game theory here and there.
Why not just build it into transaction fees? I mean, if they're doing something, make them, if it's a game, make them pay an asset or whatever it is. I mean,
well, it's the actions that are kind of like monotonous, like let's say just transferring it between 2 wallets. So it's like that's not particularly tied to the game itself. That's just kind of like there, or like let's say like the action for like I don't know, like register, like reg producer, right? There's lots of actions like this that kind of exist that technically, well, if there's 0 fees, you could just bought that. You could like even though there's no reward.
In my opinion, especially if you're in a private chain, semi-private even, if you do it, it's related. I mean, it may not be related to the gameplay, but if it's an asset getting transferred to another account, that's a player doing something with a game asset. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't have anything to do. I mean, so it's all related to game actions because you wouldn't be in the chain if you weren't doing something with the game, right?
Right.
Now, that being said, you're right, and Anders can agree with me on FIO has fees. That's another antelope chain that they built in quantified fees for all of their transactions. And you're right. I have to pay a quarter every time I reg prod. It's like 50 cents to unreg and re-reg. So we just miss around and go with our upgrades on the fly. But anyway, point is that you're right. I mean, to do things mundane costs money, but it's an action related to the ecosystem, you know?
Yeah, and it keeps the chain safe, right? So it is.
If that's part of that concern, not everybody has that concern. I'm glad that you do. But if that's a concern about resource management and providing non-CPU, non-whatever, I think that you still have to make it cost something. It's just part of the game.
Yeah. I think that is the best bet. That seems to be like, I think it's the easiest solution. And as far as I can see right now, the only solution, just having a tiny cost to any and all actions, solves like, well, just any like infinite, because I'm just like imagining someone setting up a script, like a bash script that just pushes actions, like 500 actions in a transaction every second, every block, just fills it up.
I've got 3 or 4 of those in my testing stress. I mean, I can fire the cannons at you whenever you're ready, baby.
Yeah,
it's not hard. You're right. I mean. But if you want to prevent against that, I mean, at the chain level, the protocol is not very well designed. It's either free or can be free. You eat it on the chin, or you rewrite it to, like all other chains have done, and most of them, is no, at all costs. Now, if you charge for failed versus successful is another question. You know what I mean? Like every time my ETH swap fails, I still get charged.
Yes. So, is that even possible on Antelope? Bill for failed transactions?
I mean, you rewrite the binary, sure.
Well, I mean, anything's possible if you do that. But
right. That's and I think the question is more. I mean, is it like super duper difficult? I would probably say probably not. I mean, you would have to just get the API to. If it gets it, it submits it and just submits it as failed. You know, whatever it would be. I don't know. But there's a fundamental difference between having to pay for everything and that works and having to pay for things that don't work. Because that's what the other flaw of Antelope is you just smash it until it works. Right? And that's how fun fact, you're setting up a VP. That's how you should set up your VP script. You should just claim however fast you want, and it just fails and fails and fails and fails and fails. And as soon as you're available to get paid, it pays you, and then it keeps failing. That way you never miss a single cent of your pay. But you never get charged for the 50,000 API calls that you just smashed in, hopefully to your own node. Because
I would say you do it more beautiful than that, but yeah.
No, I will give you a bash script that you can run every 5 minutes, and it works like a fucking champ, man. You can write all sorts of magic like Anders, but you can also do it the easy way because you don't get billed for failed transactions. And you should use api.waxsweden.org for that. Smash.
Smash ahoy.
At which point, why would you even want to bill failed transactions when they can get rejected at the API level already?
That's part of the reason we have 1 million API smashes an hour. I don't process 1 million transactions on my APIs. Well, I mean, I don't pass 1 million transactions through my APIs. They're just smashing the contracts until it gets accepted. I mean, I can see the responses that we're giving them. Nope, assert, nope, assert, nope, assert. Okay. And so all they're doing is just smashing the shit and just causing all sorts of extra traffic until it gets accepted because there's no penalty.
You can also do that by moving around the APIs. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, yes. I mean, you just amplify the problem across all of us providers that are forced to provide.
No, but you can use the contract and go from the backside, having triggers and shit, like some guys have done in the past.
Oh man, there's some crazy stuff. The coin drop, you know, like in the vending machine, you put it halfway in and then pull it back out the top and let the dominoes fall below it. Yes, there's all sorts of crazy things that you can do. But anyway, back to the resources. There's two. You know, one is things should be free. When I play my Web 2 games, I don't get charged for pressing a button. That's what you're competing with. But
indeed,
if you want to run a blockchain and not have its resources abused, that Web 3 is not Web 2.
Yep.
And Antelope it's great, but it's got its own nuances and issues, you know?
I think it would be any chain under this under like being used for like a similar purpose. I think it's like just a fundamental issue of
it is not unique to Wax or Antelope. Yeah. Correct. Now I'll tell you this: Bitcoin doesn't have that problem. Bitcoin is not used for the same issue or for the same purpose, really. It's to get ordinals, but I mean the whole Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, imagine unpacking an NFT though, like.
They have ordinals. I mean, so it's their version of it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not the same. But literally, every single transaction Bitcoin has ever made since Satoshi is like 0.5 terabyte of block log. Full history. You know, I mean, now Solana's like 0.5 petabyte or something already, right? I mean, just to go on the other side, all other chains are not always better, but I don't know. I tend to lean on you're going to have to eat that resource cost because you're going to have to obscure it. What's the lesser of two evils? Pissing your users off via UX or dealing with the cost of running a product?
Yeah.
Rhetorical question, obviously.
Yeah, I know.
Yours
You gotta
today,
deal with the
my
cost.
opinion
You gotta
doesn't
find a
matter.
way to deal with it. I mean, on the bright side, like, well, players are gonna be able to get the system token just by playing the game, and that's gonna be an off-chain thing. That's gonna be sort of off-chain events triggering the generate loot action. That's gonna inject the tokens into their wallets. So, if the game itself is relatively bot-proof, then some fees are added just like flat rate to all of the actions, then it'd be pretty difficult for like a botnet to operate.
Nothing is bot-proof. Nothing.
No, you're right. But you can get pretty close. You can get pretty close. It's cat and mouse, right? I mean, you take one step, they take another, right?
If there's incentive, you will never get close. You will just smash, and they will do a new thing, and you smash, and they do a new thing, and you smash.
Right. I mean, like even Microsoft and GitHub, whenever Wax in, what was it, 21, I guess, when AW took off, Microsoft, and essentially GitHub called up and killed the integration for the OAuth because they couldn't stop the bot farms. They just knew why the bot farms were smashing on them out of nowhere and said, that's what they want, so no more, and their problem was fixed. But I mean, even the biggest, baddest conglomerates out there can't stop the bot wars. They just try to make it to where the prize isn't big enough for the battle.
Fair.
Right? I
mean, that's definitely a solid approach.
And then, like I say, Web3, you obscure your whole UI from it. I mean, when you give raw direct access to the back-end processing code, you lose 80%. You know, I mean, I can hide a button in my app and protect a feature, right? That is nothing close to that in, contracts, right? It takes probably 3 times the effort to detect, prevent, and I don't know, respond, whatever you want to call it.
It's not easy. But I feel like if that's the outlook, then like there's just no possible way that any game with a virtual economy can exist, So I feel like there's gotta be a way. Even though if there's some level of botting, I mean, it's not that like the objective is to, well, I don't know, end all botting forever, because that's probably unrealistic, unlikely.
Yeah, it won't happen.
But just more so, yeah. And it's like, okay, well, I'll find some way to deal with it. But I think it's more so like preventing just like someone just setting up a simple bash script that's just going to transfer assets back and forth for like the sheer purpose of like maliciously filling up the blocks with garbage, Like even if people are like, I don't know, they set up a bot that's actively playing the game and like buying assets and contributing to the economy, it's like, okay, like it's doing something, I guess. It's actually kind of moving things forward, but
what if you just programmed the interface or the contracts to not be directly interfaceable outside of the UI?
You can bot the UI as well.
I don't disagree, but I can't write a bash script to easily.
No, but you ask ChatGPT and you have a script that can interact with it.
Look, I'm not saying you can stop it all, but I mean, at the UI level, you have a hell of a lot more power and less pain to stop either a bot or a person versus at the contract level, right? I mean, if they can't ever have a button that says transfer, they can't abuse the transfer feature. At the contract level, I think it's smash them all day long.
That's true, but the fear is if any of the game servers go down, then it's just completely inaccessible for like a period of time, you know? Whereas if it's like...
I agree, but that's a different issue. That's a redundancy, scaling. That's a Web 2 problem.
Yep.
Let me ask you this: if you were building a Web 2 product, would your solution be, you know what? If the React front end goes down, just open up the PG SQL port and point them to that.
Well, no, not that that React would go down, but more like the serverless functions, like the backend, the database for digital assets and whatnot. I
don't disagree, but that's not what you're describing getting abused by your end users. I mean, your end users aren't going to go abuse your back-end processes. I mean, in all fairness, it feels like with the blockchain, that's even more redundant. You can just run it on 18 different servers and 17 of them are failing because the other one already got it done. And if one fails, the other 17, okay, now I get one in or whatever. But the main thing is on the front end, right? Stop abusing. Don't give the users the ability to abuse. Do it, block it at the contract level and say, no, you can't use the contracts directly. And then you secure it via your UI.
Could be done.
Just brainstorming. Hopefully, some other people with some ideas. Because I know I like sidechains. I think that I wish that was much more of an opt-in possibility for people. So I'm thrilled to see you blazing that trail, because then I'm gonna be like, sea lions, Costa Rica, or what are you? Broken twig, something twig.
Yeah, 2 sticks. Oh yeah,
2 sticks. There you go. 2 sticks. I was close. 2 sticks. Yeah. I may call you Broken Twig forever. I'm sorry, but it's
that's all right.
Anyway, but that's why I say I'm excited, but I think a lot of it has to do. And you're a super nerd. You're a super blockchain nerd, so you want to make the blockchain do it right. And I mean, sometimes it's better to just step back and be like,
Oh, it'd be so much easier if it was just serverless functions, just like on an S3 or something, like 100%.
I run your front ends on S3s, right? I mean, have it run a local node on an AWS server or whatever, and then do your blockchain stuff magically behind the scenes as needed, right? Mm-hmm. Make Web3 the little bitty bubble, and it's still Web 2, right? React is Web 2. We just bolted it into a blockchain, Web 3.
Just don't run a full history on S3s. Don't do that.
I mean,
I
read some on.
I checked it. It's like 15 times as expensive as running bare metal for history, Hyperion.
Storage, yes, I will agree. I remember when we were trying to figure out your pricing for hosting servers, right? Because I was like, fine, I don't want to host it. I'll just run and do it. And
it's like $6,000 per month versus $100,000 per month on Amazon.
It's astronomical space. They get you on the space, right? They have no problem on the clock cycles and all of that, but space that you use and never give back, it gets so expensive so quick. That you're right. And that's why it was like a $2,000 monthly charge. Because if you went to go do that same 20 terabyte server in the cloud, it was like $1,600 just in hardware costs. And that was small, right? I mean, now it's way bigger than that. Anyway. I know we kind of diverged off into slightly other topics. They are tech.
They are chain related also.
Side chain. I would love to see that. Because you can just make it so much better of an interface and then use Wax as needed.
Fingers crossed. Using it like any chain as needed, and just having
on a Wax call. I explicitly said Wax, but
of course.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I'm really focusing on trying to keep the the operating costs as low as possible. Just keep it nice and slim, because it's like, yeah, this just might not work out like at all, or it could be legendary, right? It's really like going to be one or the other. It's not I think there's like maybe like a 2-3% chance I might be able to pull it off. But
I'll also say this, in thinking about, state is the biggest problem you run into, because that's kind of a consistent, you can't ever trim it, you can't ever really get rid of it.
For Antelope today it is, yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
But block log and Hyperion and state and all that, it's trimmable. So it's the idea of, fine, run all of your main front end servers in block log trimming and Hyperion only the last 2 months worth or whatever, but you can also still maintain obviously a copy and
you need at least a few full block logs.
Right. You have those, but they're more kind of behind the scenes as
block logs is easy compared to
right. But that's
else.
not your main application servers API. So anything that's not needed at that level, that way you can keep your footprint and your operational costs small like you want. So if you don't blow out state, you don't need massive amounts of memory. And as long as you're trimming the logs, do you really care if there's 5,000 transfers? If after a week, you're only going to use maybe 10, 20, 30 gigs in a block log, right? But to help you reduce that operational cost, you need it on your BPs, maybe some back-end big history servers, but cheaper, slower, not as numerous, but just to allow you to keep that front end by nice, fast AWS servers or whatever your preferred provider is, redundant around the world, blah, 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 but not have to put 30 terabytes of block log on it or ever worry about it. Fine, it's just constantly rolling. It never gets more. I got an Ultra node that has like a 50 gig drive. It's running 2 nodes, mainnet and testnet, but it's constantly rolling. It's just designed as kind of a middleman in between. You can keep those things really small.
Cos, did you further think through the idea of net representing the cost to store state or to serve history?
I'm sorry, could you ask me a question again?
Yeah, I think a while back, like 3 or 4 months, it was actually in late of summer, I can remember that. We were talking about how storing of full history has no price for the chain per se, or for the user who is writing data onto the blockchain, right? And then we were thinking creatively about what if the debt provider or whoever is storing the data would be built net of which the history storage would be paid off. I think that it's all about.
That's pretty close. That's pretty close to what it was. It was just kind of like a bit of an inequality and kind of like an oversight in how Antelope is designed in regards to billing for inline actions and the data that's within them. Because normally when like with net, it's supposed to be like the data that you put on chain. I feel like that's what it was like designed with in mind. But what you can do is you can just set like a vector of bytes, like a megabyte, or maybe not a full megabyte, but like around like 100 kilobytes with an inline action, and you can generate that very cheap, And it's like I think it came to, my memory's a little bit rough on this because a while ago, I think it was like 5 milliseconds of CPU was able to create something like 1 megabyte of state deltas and like history solution stuff, And so it was just kind of so this doesn't really solve that issue per se. That issue is still kind of like a problem. I guess this chain can, because it's, you're not going to have malicious contracts deployed on it because it's semi-privatized. But the real solution that it's solving is more so like how like the difficulty with state and how you have NFTs that or just like lots of like data on chain that persists indefinitely, even though it's not really doing anything. It's not really in service. Like, yeah, sure, you might have digital asset ownership of like an Alien World shovel, but that's not really, well, what if you don't play the game for 3 years, you know? What if you don't play the game at all anymore, right? And so you have lots of digital assets, you have lots of this massive burden of data that's on chain that users were able to acquire, or dApps or like NFT collections, smart contract deployers were able to acquire that space for a one-time payment of RAM, and then that expense of RAM is just being recurringly billed to all the node operators on every single device that they have, and all of the like private infra as well that projects have, right? So it's just like, you know, it doesn't really make sense for everyone to have to front that expense just because so and so wants to like have like millions of NFTs that are all the same template. They're like not even doing anything, you know. It feels like a really poor use of resources and just money straight up, you know. So that's the solution to that on my chain is the space-time model, right? Users are billed for space on a set period of time. If they don't have the tokens for it, it just starts burning NFTs, right? So you're gonna have to play every day or just stock up a little bit. And it's not supposed to be something crazy expensive, you know. The target is like, I think once you're like actually you're playing a lot, you've made some good progress. I want you to be able to play like 1 hour. You're gonna be able to keep like 60 NFTs good for a month. You know, you're gonna have to like be able to cover those expenses just for an hour a month, right? 60 NFTs, that's plenty. It's gonna prevent the thing that happens when users hoard tens of thousands of NFTs, so many NFTs that APIs are like exploding trying to just serve it to them, right? It's ridiculous. No one needs that many NFTs. They don't like it. That's like that becomes an amount of NFTs where you yourself don't even know what you have. You can't even look at them to see, well, what are they even worth? There isn't even a user base to purchase those assets from you, because that's why they hold them, right? You hold those NFTs, oh, you never know when it will go up. And so that's kind of like the...
Yeah, but you can't fix people.
No, you can't, but you can curb behaviors with mechanics, right? So I'm trying to prevent like immense, you know, like loot goblins, right? If you want to pick up every single item, you're gonna have to pay for that, right? You got to make a choice. You get rid of your commons, pick up the mythics, pick up the legendaries.
So I'd say I agree, but nothing can be free. Somebody either has to pay for it, either they or you. Or me as a provider.
Yeah, and I mean, users will be able to like offset that cost just by playing the game, right? It's not meant to be something that's like you have to go to the store and like or like buy it directly from me. It's like while you're playing the game, you will be able to offset your costs and you'll have some to spare, you know. But you won't have enough to spare to the extent that you'll be able to pick up like every single like stick and stone and like banana peel on the ground, right? And then like store that for years, and then like everyone else is paying for that effectively, right? It just doesn't make sense, you know. So that's the prospect.
It's quite a creative idea. Time constrained NFTs.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, and so well that comes with a whole bunch of other issues as well, which is of course people's expectations, you know, people's understandings of NFTs.
So I got a general question. If you're, and we'll just go on like a timed NFT. If you're going to snatch an NFT after a certain amount of time on a pre-agreed upon agreement, if you want to call it, why use blockchain? Why is that? Why not be Web2?
It could be. It totally could be.
That you're going to mutate. I mean, isn't that somewhat counterintuitive of the whole, it's your asset, indefinitely yours to do what you want. If you want to hoard and blow up every API with 20,000 bullshit ass dead scam projects, like my account does, it's a great way to break people's apps. That's my right of owning an NFT. That's like kind of that core concept. Now, that said, I support what you say. Nah, bro, it's my world. But why is it even an NFT then? If you're willing and programmatically just going to snatch it back, it's not your asset. My asset that I'm letting you keep as long as I want.
And if it's that many, why isn't it a fungible token?
True.
Well,
why not make your sticks be tokens?
Well, they won't be sticks. No, it will be actual, like anything that's an NFT will not be just a flat static template. All of it's generative.
Well, you were talking about you can't pick up every animal or apple, every stick, every whatever. If it's
I meant in terms of like garbage. You know, like you can't pick up the things that are like you can if you're willing to front the costs. You know,
right? But why do those have to be NFTs if they were tokens? I mean, if an apple is a token,
they're generative.
An NFT.
They're all generative. Everything has traits. Everything.
Michael.
Like anything that's a fungible, there are lots of other fungible tokens within it, but it's like anything that can be reduced in bite size, it will be.
Anyway, sorry, Enrique. I heard you. Did you say my name or somebody else?
Yeah. Why would you think it was more okay for your tokens to suddenly disappear than your NFTs? I mean, why is
I don't think either are. I question if that's going to be part of the mechanic of your app, and I understand why. Then that's against the kind of general reason why, in my opinion, kind of use smart contract or blockchain for tokens and NFTs. They're your assets until you decide that they aren't. Whether they have a use case or not is up to, obviously the creator. And then you also get into the chain, right? Because technically some chains can take them from you. But if you're going to delete an asset, if you haven't used it, why should it be an NFT? Why wouldn't it just be a record in a local database?
It can be. It absolutely can be. But this is actually like relatively cost effective, and it just opens up the entire marketing and advertising aspect of having a blockchain, like a crypto game. There are lots of strengths to just having it entirely Web 2. There absolutely are, but this is a moonshot, right? This isn't just a risk; it's a moonshot.
Well, I get it. I mean, and like I say, I'm not against.
It's a compromise.
It's more.
Yeah.
I agree that it's not about the technology when it really comes down to it. It's almost as much about the buzzword as it is about the actual underlying blockchain tech. So, but that's also why I go, I'll be honest, you go to some of my apps and the blockchain features are mostly all Web 2 because they don't have to be blockchain until they have to be blockchain. So do it all on a Web 2 level and say, fine, you want your asset? No problem. You can export it to your account, and then you can pay the chain and whatever. And then everything up until that point is 100% free because it's web, or generally it's Web 2. It's all through your interface. It's all through whatever. But you can allow that ability to say, by all means, if you want your asset, take your asset. But you're going to pay to bridge it to Ethereum or bridge it to Wax or whatever.
And that is a valid approach. That absolutely is a valid approach. Something like this just doesn't exist, and this is like at a level of like complexity that it becomes like language kind of falls apart. Like you need a visual, you need to just play it, you need to, right? Like the prospect of playing for an hour and finding hundreds of NFTs, there's not a single game that exists like that, and it honestly is cost effective to actually have all the assets on a database with this kind of like space-time model, because it just like, at least for like operating it curbs the state, so it's like,
right. And that's why I go back to, I mean, I get it, there's nothing out there like that, but also blockchain tech or the atomic standard, and I mean, I'll generalize some, it's not exactly optimized for that. It is not optimized for trash assets. If anything, Farmer's World taught us two things. People are amazingly stupid with money, and the ways you shouldn't use blockchain tech and assets and hell, even tokens, I think. But,
in some
know what I
ways,
mean?
simple assets is better for it than atomic assets.
Mm-hmm.
well, and they use more token versus straight up contract. Well, I guess they're all contracts, but it's also, I think, a little bit more limited in its.
It's like the benefit of atomic assets is the templating
Right.
to reduce cost and everything. And if everything is kind of different, the templates start to make less sense at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how
Yeah.
many iterations you can have of something. But if everything is generative, then everything is unique, which means that the templating can make a little bit of sense if there's a core asset that is the same, but it starts to lose the benefit. I don't know.
It does, and it honestly becomes like, although it's 151 bytes of RAM for just a templated asset, the moment you start adding any generative traits to it, that RAM cost goes through the roof.
Because the main difference between simple asset and atomic asset is that simple asset, the user is responsible for the payments of the assets, and the atomic asset is the collection that is responsible. That's the main, well, and the templating and stuff like that.
Which works, and if, well, in the context of what I'm building, the RAM on every account is set to 1 gigabyte. You know, so it's just gonna be, it'll be managed in a different way. You know, it'll be managed in a different way.
You give a free account 1 gig of RAM?
1 gig of RAM. They'll never fill it up. I mean,
why would they get 1 gig then? Like on a theoretical level.
Well, I mean, 1 meg wouldn't have been enough. So
you multiply times 1,000.
Yeah.
1024. Sorry, by 1024.
Love a lot of RAM.
I mean, it wouldn't get eaten on the resource until it's used. But doesn't that seem to just exacerbate? Holy shit, dude! I mean, you could have 100 accounts, simply 100 accounts. That's not a massive. I mean, I could accumulate that under the radar in a few days. You would think. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you would never really pick up on it and just smash it and blow it from your 8 gig state to 100 gig state.
But they'll never be able to actually like acquire that many, because like as you have NFTs, as you pick them up after 24 hours, because what you're paying for isn't really the NFT, you're paying for the storage, the stash space, you know. So if you don't have the tokens to cover the cost, it just starts eating them. Now, granted, it is possible, like, if someone has, you know, like thousands of accounts and they pick up millions of NFTs within a very short period of time, that state blowing up like just for a day is possible. And then of course they can't cover the costs because there won't even be enough tokens in circulation. But so I am going to have to figure out how to tackle that one thing, you know. I
would even just say create it with 10 meg and have a daily allocation to be like, you know, I mean, okay, if it's close, go buy a more RAM or something like that. If you're using Antelope or Spring, you know, they're about to get that new feature that, what is it, RAM transfer or give me my RAM back, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, that's at least a little bit better of being able to get it back. But I think both Anders and I both twitched a little bit when new accounts get a gig of RAM.
They do. Well, I mean, they're never going to fill it up. Even filling up like a couple megabytes is going to be almost impossible.
If your game has 1,000 players, that's a terabyte.
It's just, it's bypassed. It's not real.
Then why allow it? That's the whole reason of limits.
They'll never reach it. Hopefully not. I mean,
famous last words.
If the smart contract is designed properly, they'll never reach it. Like the smart contract should patch it well before because even if there was a limit per account, it wouldn't solve the issue of having thousands of accounts picking up every single like common NFT, and then it just blows a state up, right?
Right, that's a different issue. That, like I say, it doesn't help when you give them a gig of RAM per account. I mean, that's Jesus. Yeah. How about this? When you are ready to beta test, please, please let me and Andrews in.
Of course. You guys already got the details. You already got
Oh, I don't want the details. I want to just stumble and poke and prod and break the shit. That's my magic. But give me a gig of RAM and see what I do.
You won't be able to deploy contracts. You won't be able. There's no name bids as well. That's to say, well, like I'm not kidding. When I said I rewrote the entire systems contract, it's like some 30,000 lines of code in that repo. I went over every single line in all of it this weekend.
If I send an asset to an account that doesn't have an asset, I have to pay the RAM for it.
Sure.
So if I had a gig of RAM and just started spraying assets, I'm going to trigger my account to eat RAM.
Sure, but it's just going to take it from one, like, it will just take it from one to another.
On an NFT, not on a token.
Not on a token.
Token, you got to insert a new record into the table for every new account.
You pay for a new row.
Oh,
right.
For that, there's the solution, and that comes from my token standard, because my token standard stores tokens in a map. So you know an EOSIO asset? Yeah, I know.
It's one string of balance?
Yeah.
I'll go back to my, how many accounts do you expect to scale out to before that becomes impossible?
We'll be fine. Oh, no. Everyone's balance isn't in one row. No. Everyone's got their own balance. But for multiple tokens, it's one row. Because an EOSIO asset, it's 16 bytes.
So and everyone are automatically in that contract, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, they do. Yeah. You have the systems contract with like EOSIO.token, and then the other one, which is the actual like game, like full game token
so
contract.
The way you abuse that is by creating a shit ton of accounts. That's the way to do that.
But even account creation has whitelisting on it. So that's what I've been doing this weekend, getting the actual like setting up like a privileging system for certain just to give that to certain accounts. So creating accounts is whitelisted, and same with set code and set ABI. That's got separate whitelist as well. So I'm really trying to like lock down any potential like attack vector while keeping it as cost effective and lucrative for everyone, you know.
Do you disable reg prod?
Can you handle inline actions? Because a lot of barriers often look at the first action in a transaction when they are looking at these whitelists. That's an error that BioChain had recently, where they looked at the first actions. So they check, okay, this is fine, that was a free action, and then below it there was a lot of actions that are supposed to be paid, but they circumvented it because they only looked at the first action and didn't account for the other ones, and they could have a lot of free transactions that way. I don't know if that's relevant. I am just raising that question. Because you need to account for, okay, I bind multiple actions, and what happens then? Probably it's fine, but depends on where you check the permission. Because if I have
the set code and set ABI, they're set to check the permissions of the account it's deploying to. So there's no way to circumvent that. And the new account action, it's set to check the permissions of the creator. So where those new accounts are originating from. So I don't think there's any way to, and these are I think the creator is a parameter passed within transaction object or the action object for new account. So it should be good on that front to prevent those kind of but I do see your point. Yeah, well, like get first receiver or whatever. We'll think about that. We'll think about that. There's a lot of there's a lot.
Yeah,
of
because if they can do something on the system contract, then they wrap another action under it. That's like the thing that what happens then. Is that prevented in the contract since you're rewriting a lot of things?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to see. I'm still stuck trying to figure out how to deploy it. It's just not compiling properly. So one step at a time.
I would ping Kevin and them. I mean, I would just straight up slide up in there and be like, "Hey, bro, WTF?" But I can guess a lot, and like I say, my guess is probably some stupid CDT version.
I mean, like I can say that, but they're gonna look at like this repo and they're gonna say WTF to me because they're gonna be like, why have you done this? Like I know anyone that so.
No worries. I'm pretty sure the questions you spent the last couple of months asking, that's going to be nothing outside of anything they would expect. I mean,
sure.
I hear what you're saying, but man, you've been asking a lot of great, good questions. Well, way on the other side of that line. So don't feel like you're going to offend them by showing them that craziness. But no, literally, I mean, I would ping them and see at least what they maybe thought, but my dumb, uneducated monkey guess is CDTs. Or the version of the contract you're using. Literally, you're linked to the wrong one. You don't know it, but you may be using the wrong one.
It's possible. It's definitely anything's possible at this point. So
that MSIG contract was out of whack for years. Years the repos did not reflect the right version, and people were constantly getting out of whack and trying to chase down that updated MSIG that didn't have deferred transactions.
Interesting.
Yeah, it took a while for Wax to get that as well.
But it wasn't required up until the point, but yeah, I mean, you're fresh on Spring though, right? So I mean, hopefully a lot of the antiquated getting to there isn't as much of a discussion.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. I feel like I've got a good wrap on like the whole finalizer thing.
If you want some more, ping me on that. I'm very familiar with it because obviously we're running in and finalizing, but it is a unique ball of poo-poo. I tell them regularly I would not have done it the way that some of the things that they would have done. I'm not going to even be able to do it, but it works, kind of.
I was thinking of having a like a sort of like a singular source of like RNG in a way that just holds like a 256 and it just keeps spinning like on block. It keeps spinning and it could actually take an input from any of the producers, just put in like you want to toss in a new seed in there, it'll just accept it and it'll just take random bytes out of that new seed and it'll just spin this one again. And then I want to also see if I could get the stuff that's being made in the finalizers table and those keys and use those to spin it, and just having multiple sources of RNG that's on chain through all kinds of actions that like even the stuff that players are doing, right, where they're using this RNG and using that to spin it even more. And then it effectively becomes like this should be a pretty solid source of randomness that's just fully on chain and can be used for anything. And it's like anything that uses it just sort of feeds back into it.
RNG is a whole nother battle, but yes.
I know I've lost so much sleep over like thinking like this RNG is not random enough. This isn't a.
I don't know if any are going to be, but I know Redican got kicked in once to go somewhere. He said he's got to go at 5.
Yeah, asking you guys, shall we conclude today? Shall we continue next week? Or do you, of course, you can stick around and have more intensive discussions? But I need to go in 5 minutes.
Probably a good. It's been an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a minute.
Okay.
I think it's good
conclude.
to discuss these things.
It is. That's why we are meeting on Tuesdays. Bring along any tech ops or DevOps related topic and talk with experts in the field. Brainstorm, think about things together. I like it. That's the purpose of this call. Let's repeat that next week then. I hope you all have a great Tuesday. Thanks for raising the awesome topics, Kaz, and let's pick up the call next week then. Happy Tuesday, and talk to you next week then.
Peace.